Dear HR colleagues in Europe and beyond, today we're going to meet Paolo Gallo. Before that, it's my privilege for me as president of the European HR Association, EAPM, to welcome you. Today we celebrate International HR Day for the fourth time, originally by initiative from Lithuania and Ireland, nurtured in Europe, and today celebrated all over the world. It's a day to reflect on what lies behind us, to be proud, and to mobilize for what lies ahead. It's a day to celebrate on what we are, how we contribute, and what we believe in. And HR is indeed bigger than itself. During COVID, HR has delivered on what was expected, but also on needs many did not see when the crisis started. On our way out of COVID, we shaped the new future. I'll return to that in a bit. Then came Ukraine. It's a tragic disaster for Ukrainians and many Russians. Let's not forget that, with consequences for us all. Many Ukrainians are dying. Many have become refugees, and all of them see their beloved country being torn into pieces. Stock markets all over the world are shivering. Energy prices are on the rise. Inflation is increasing, and recession is a realistic threat to many countries. All of us are worried. The poor ones afraid of not being able to put bread on the table, but also those who already are low on motivation and those who do not see themselves as a part of the organization in the future. They really struggle. We talk about fatigue, big resignation, big quit, lost generation, distrust, the rise of skepticism and isolationism. We see the rise of strong leaders, those who are good on creating unity by defining external enemies. We have seen this before in the past with terrible consequences. It's toxic and it's contagious. For us who mainly work at the company level, it's important to remember that much starts with daily life. What we experience at work and stories parents tell around the kitchen table. Work is a source for income, dignity, and social security, and we must deliver on that. It's also an arena for individual development where we foster values and where we live our lives, where we are leaders and where we see leadership displayed in all its forms. When we look around, we see excellent leaders. We know who they are, and the opposite. Management by fear, distance, and humiliation. Yes, Drucker was right. Culture still eats strategy for breakfast. This is our responsibility, conducting people management. We should foster a culture of trust, psychological safety, empowerment, and inclusion. With clear objectives, everyone can support and act upon. And with freedom when it comes to execution, a people-centric policy. That puts HR at the core. Something good comes out of everything. In a bizarre way, COVID and Ukrainian disaster, reinforced by global talent scarcity, might pave the way for a different kind of leadership, a different working life. A crisis is an opportunity too good to go to waste, as we know, where we invest in people, reskill, upskill, and where we build better structures, leadership, and processes, where we utilize technology, increase productivity, and achieve a better work-life balance, and do good for the environment. All at the same time. We should create a magnet effect to all those good people we have already hired and those we want to attract in the future, a caring and demanding culture. People are valued and given the opportunity to show the best side of themselves. I mean, this is not rocket science at all. People is the main source of competitive advantage in most companies, and the same goes with public sector. Much is up to us. We are in the people business, the most important business of all. The hashtag for the International Day is, alongside International HR Day, HR Shaping the New Future. That is exactly what we aim to do. Shaping the new future. Let's make sure it's a good one. HR is indeed bigger than itself. It's more than a job, more than a profession. It's about creating value in all its forms for the benefit of companies, us as individuals, and society as a whole. A wise guy once said, talk about the dream, try to make it real. That guy was Bruce Springsteen. Today, it's my privilege to introduce Paolo Gallo. I have only attended 5, I think, Bruce Springsteen concerts. First one back in 1981. I believe you have attended substantially more. You are a man talking about the dream, trying to make it real. And you are one of us. Former HR director at the World Economic Forum, World Bank, European Bank, amongst much else. I first met you at a conference in Lillehammer some years ago. You impressed us all with your knowledge, skills, and values, your ability to describe a bigger picture, with a growth perspective, and where we enjoy and embrace change. We then welcomed you on stage with the sound of Hungry Heart. In retrospect, I find this as an excellent music choice for such an introduction. So if not in a Springsteen way and Hungry Heart, at least with Eurovision. Take it away, Paolo. You are good to go.
No, listen, Evan, first of all, you have no idea how much appreciate your word of wisdom, your introduction. And I'm sure people are disappointed because I have to say Bruce Springsteen, people maybe expect Bruce Springsteen and they get only Paolo Gallo. But just to maybe put an emphasis on your words and your wisdom and your reflection, Evan. When I finished university, that was about 345 years ago. I studied Bocconi, studied finance and economics, and then I went to my professor and I said I decided to work in human resources. And he looked at me with the same expression that you would have if you were to meet a ghost, like he couldn't believe it. Like what's wrong with you, no? And I explained why I wanted to work in human resources, which is fundamentally exactly what you just said, Evan, which I believe that the competitive advantage and the passion is about developing people. And he looked at me and he said, well, Paolo, I respect your choice. It's a pity because I thought you would have gone to, finance or whatever, but, it's your choice. But he said, you're very innocent and you're going to lose your innocence by working in human resources. And the guy was right, because, as soon as you start working in human resources, you get some disappointment, because you see in the standard deviation, the best and the worst of people and organization when you work in human resources. But then the philosopher, means Bruce, came and he gave me the key to solve that problem. Because Bruce, in an interview, said the very difficult things in life is how do you keep your faith after you lose your innocence? How do you keep your faith after you lose your innocence? And this, if you think, is a lot to do with our profession, because we have lost our innocence. We saw redundancy, we saw COVID, we saw the war, we saw maybe bad practices in management in some organizations, in some countries, bad example of leaderships as well. But we keep our faith. The faith is about developing people, making sure that people are valued for the sake of growing the organization. And I think that what we have in common here, I know there are people from all over the world tonight and today, and I'm very grateful, is actually we kept our faith. So in a way, we are all Bruce Springsteen fans. So, and on that note, let me share the screen with you guys because I wanted to let me see. You are screen sharing. Let me see. Okay. So Evan, I wanted to produce an image that reflects perhaps the spirit that we have after dealing with everything we dealt with in the last few months. And I decided to use another philosopher, which is Shrek. Of course, is a fun way, but is a serious way to say, listen, guys, we had quite a lot of stuff to do. And if you think about it's not about the quantity, but also the disruptive element of whatever we've been doing in human resources in the last few months. So before starting, I'm going to have 2 questions for you. And Rebecca, I know you are a most wonderful DJ for me today. So I'm going to ask you to help me because I want to get an answer from you guys. The first question for you is, how good are you in singing from 0 to 10? Okay. So this is not about Bruce Springsteen. It's about your capacity to sing. So if you think that you're like a Pavarotti, Bono, Bruce Springsteen, or Maria Callas, put a 10. If you're pretty bad like I am, in a good day, I'm a 2, but usually I'm a 1. So how good are you in singing? And for me, it's two. Rebecca, can you read some of the answer from the participants? And then we'll go back to this question at the end of the presentation.
Hi, Paolo. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, all those who are joining us from around the world, and happy International HR Day. The numbers are coming in thick and fast. 2, 4, 3, 7. Oh, between a 1 and a 2. I'm a solid 5. 6, 1 to 2, 7. I think 7's. Oh, 8. 8. We're doing well. 0 points from Eurovision. I'm guessing they're not particularly good. I think 8. Oh, 12. Someone's super confident. Maybe we should ask them to sing today. Okay. I appreciate the desire and an enthusiastic 10. I'm not sure if they're really a 10, if they're an enthusiastic 10.
Okay, well.
Oh, someone's being a bit controversial. Bruce Springsteen is a 5. Ooh, not sure about that.
I want to connect.
Not in my view, Paolo. I'm going to come off camera now. That's given us a great start.
Okay. No, thank you, Rebecca. And again, thank you for inviting me to International HR Day. I cannot think of a more important item to discuss. Park your answer here, because sometimes ago I ask these questions to a group of leaders in organization. There were 170, and we did the math, and the average was 3.72. So we said, okay, you guys are good 3.72. Let's park this information here. We're going to get this at the end. The second question that I have for you, who invented superheroes with superpower? Who invented them? Which country invented them? Rebecca, I need your help again. Which country invented superheroes?
USA, America, USA, Japan. USA, France, USA, France. Greece, Japan, USA, lots of USA, India, Japan, India. USA. Ooh, there's a lot for USA. A lot of people think superheroes came from the USA, with a close second of Japan, I reckon.
Okay, grazie again. Rebecca, by the end of the presentation, you would have improved your Italian as well, which is an additional benefit of listening to me. But joking beside, actually, there is one person that answered correctly, because the superhero were not invented in United States. Were invented in Greece more than 3,000 years ago. They have 12 Olympian gods, and I'd like you to point out there is a great diversity distribution, because the chairman of the board was Zeus, but there were 6 female gods, a goddess, and 6 male gods. So there were a good distribution in terms of diversity. So when the Romans conquered Greece, and they conquered Greece with a battle that was fought 238 before Christ in Asculum, which is now an Italian city called Ascoli, they didn't really invent new gods. You know, they were very practical guys going to war, building streets and aqueducts, and they decided it was easier to cut and paste Greek gods rather than create a new one. Okay, also because they have more than 2,000 of them, and it was a bit complicated to sort them out. You know? So they decided to literally use the Greek gods, except one god, Janus. So this is the only Roman god that did not exist with the Greeks. Okay, with the Greek. And look at the feature of this god, because it was considered the god of transition. Transition in Latin means andare, go to another place, transire, go to another place. And this god has a unique feature to have 2 faces. The one looking at the past, that implies they invented a word called gravitas. Gravitas means wisdom, judgment, reflection. What we saw, for example, what we saw from heaven a few minutes ago. And then they had a face looking at the future, and the future was called Juventus, youth, not the soccer team, but Juventus in terms of youth, energy, and optimism. And this god was considered the god of transition, and was celebrated in every transition that occurred in their life. Yeah? So, for example, when you go from winter to summer, when the war was over, when in family kids were born, on funerals or marriages. And in case you wonder why January is called that way, because it was named after the god Janus, because it represents the transition into the new year. So if you think about what we've learned from the Romans, that in a moment of transitions, you need to have both the gravitas, meaning the judgment and the experience managing the problems, and the optimism and the energy to cope with them. So we learn from them that you're not managing change, which is external, but you're managing transition, which is internal of you. And I really believe that right now we are managing a historic transition. So today, what I want to address with you, at least maybe discuss briefly with you, are the following points. And I'm an executive coach, and I love to frame problems around questions. The first one is, what is different this time around? You know, why are we even talking about this transition, these systemic changes? What is coming next? And then there is one feature of that never occurred since the first industrial revolution in the job market, which what I believe is really relevant to the profession that we have when we work for human resources, or as I used to call it, people and culture. How can we restart, given the fatigue and the intensity of the last few years? And then going back to one of the questions that also Evan raised, to say, okay, but which kind of leadership do we need to shape, to drive not only the future of human resources, but also the future organizations? So what is different this time around? I think you know it, is the speed in which things are happening, okay? And why the speed is occurring, I think you know it already, I don't want to spend too much time, is because you have accumulative effects of technological transformation occurring as we speak, from robotics to blockchain, artificial intelligence, all of them accumulating. As you can see, they're producing an impact which is much higher than any other impact that occurred in the past. So if you think about then, stability, meaning continuing doing what we've done in the past, is a liability. In a moment of transformation, we need to look at, like Juventus with youth, and go one step further. The second element, in addition to the speed, is that whatever is happening is changing us. It's changing the way we act, we engage with other people. And this is a lot to do with a concept that's been developed by a Chinese scholar. They said we're moving to a homo society. Homo has no sexual connotation at all. It fundamentally means when online merge with offline, when the boundaries between our, may say, real life and digital life are blurring, and it's no longer clear who's doing what and where. No, this is just an example of a circus that is using holograms rather than animals. No? So what can we expect then? What can we expect? And the short answer is nobody knows. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't have the capacity to anticipate the future and to say that's going to happen. However, we can intelligently frame what is coming next. Now, we heard from many organizations, newspaper, TVs, etc., that what is coming next is called the new normal. And many organizations, I don't want to quote any of them, but they're using this term as if is an appropriate way of framing what is coming next. Yeah. In reality, if you think, let me go back to Greece. Normal is a Greek word, canonikos, that means average, predictable, ordinary, what people expect, and conforming to a type. And I think it's helpful to reflect for a second if we really expect that what is coming next is going to be normal again. I personally don't believe so. And I personally believe that what is coming next could be better defined if we say it's going to be a new context. Context is neither positive or negative. It's something that we need to shape, which increase our sense of responsibility and accountability in society. And in the new context, we're going to find chaos, crisis, complexity, confusion, and surely a constant change. Okay. We also learned that in this moment, half decision, it means a square mess. So it's important. Crisis is not a Greek word that implies taking decision, and being somewhere in between usually doesn't help. Yeah. So what are the new unprecedented feature of the job and growth market? And this is something that I repeated many times because it's something that perhaps is not usually in our radar screen. Yeah. Think about the way we have conceived and conceptualized careers in our life. And as we are HR practitioners, also in the organization where we operate, where the old paradigm was 3 phases in our life. We study, then we work for a certain number of years, let's say 35, 40, depends on the country. And then sometimes in the early 60s or maybe late 60s, you retire and you still hope to spend a nice period of your life enjoying your family, your nephew and nieces, and perhaps in a nice place. In reality, what is emerging is life expectancy is increasing. Life expectancy increased 1.5 years per decade since 1840. So every 10 years, life expectancy is increased by a little bit less than 2 years. And work will remain for many years, and the change rate is increasing dramatically. So if you think about the length of the careers, probably of our kids, I have a 16-year-old daughter, probably not to me, but for her, is going to be to 60 to 70 years. The average tenure in a job is around 5 years, a little bit less in the United States and a little bit more in Europe. And this is important. Whatever we know today, so we're now May 2020, have a residual value of around 20% in 5 years down the line. And the analogy they usually use is like we're buying a car today, in 5 years' time, this car will be worth 20% of what we paid today. The same for our skills. There is a very interesting studies done by many organizations. It depends a bit on a sector. Technology is faster than maybe other sectors, but fundamentally means whatever we know now will be almost irrelevant in 5 years down the line, okay? So careers are not gonna be like doing the same job in the same industry, maybe in the same country all your life. It's gonna be a completely different career journey where we will end up doing jobs that perhaps now doesn't even exist, okay? So what is the future of the job market then? Some times ago, I put this slide many times in my conferences because I think it's important. When Donald Trump was president of the United States, and I prefer not to say anything about him, otherwise it would be a different conversation. Part of his, let's say, propaganda to say, look, America is great again because we created 7 million jobs. In that moment, I'm talking about pre-COVID, the data were correct. But there is another part of the truth that, in my view, explain really the challenge. In the year 2000, there were 1.2 jobs available per, 1.2 candidate available per job. So fundamentally, if you think about, there are 6 candidates for 5 jobs. Then 2009, we're in the middle of financial crisis, and the ratio is close to 7. So 7 people, almost 7 people were looking for a job. And then in the year 2018, the ratio was 1 to 1. And actually the same number is confirmed over the years. And I don't want to bother you with too many graphs on this topic, but in the year 2018, the ratio was 1 to 1. And people said, well, that's brilliant because then we have as many vacancies as many candidates, okay? And so it looked like, according to the economist, let's say, approach, that the only thing that needs to be done was the improvement of the efficiency of the job markets. Fundamentally, the supply and demand meet efficiently. However, the raw labor statistics, I worked as a director of human resources for the World Bank, for the European Bank, and for the World Economic Forum, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which I visited many times given my roles, they said, hold on a second here, because in the year 2000, people find a job, equivalent job, within 6 to 9 months maximum. And when I say equivalent, it means a job with the same task in the same sector, with a salary and a compensation which is 10% more or less of what you would be making before. Now, in the year 2018, 85% of the people remained unemployed for more than 18 months. So they created a new category of workers, not the unemployed, but the unemployable. So fundamentally, what is happening right now in the job market that it never happened before, that we have simultaneously so many jobs available, created by the fourth industrial revolution, created by the technological changes, and simultaneously so many unemployed people, they became unemployable because the set of skills that they have is no longer relevant to the job market. So I really believe that this is a huge challenge that we have, which is fundamentally, how do we create employable people? How do we create people that continue to be relevant, knowing, and this is my personal opinion, the responsibility is shared between the organization, human resources, and the individual. This is not only an HR responsibility, there is a role of the organization and the manager, and by all means, a big role played by the individuals. No? So what is the future work there? And I like to just put maybe a bit of an emphasis, because I read many studies. They say, listen, HR at times is lagging a little bit behind when it comes to digital transformation. It's possible, but I want to also quote a couple of examples. The first one is IBM used to have more than 1,000 people doing recruitment. Now the number is 12. And the answer is, how it is possible they went from more than 1,000 people to 12 within a short number of years? And the answer is because they use facial recognition algorithm and artificial intelligence to recruit people. So people became, rather than just recruiters in the traditional sense, they become more and more, let's say, data analysts that are able to understand better the behavior of individuals, and then they say that candidate would be better for that function, that candidate would be terrific, that candidate probably is not the right person for us. Another example, the civil servant in Canada, they have to go through a very niche, strong, let's say, induction program, and they decided to do it with Second Life. So people are joining before joining, so they enter into the building, they create an avatar, they start to get accustomed to the organization even before they officially start. So there are some splendid examples of digital transformation done by HR all over the globe. So I think we should probably acknowledge that as well. Now, what is fair to say, that machine will increasingly do the routine work, and we know it. We know it. We know it. This is something that I don't think I'm saying anything new to you right now, but I want to share a couple of stories that to me are quite relevant. This is a hotel chain in Japan and in some other Asian countries, and they decided to fundamentally use robots to do the concierge, the reception at work. And this is what you see is a real client dressed in purple and a real robot that is, let's say, managing with the request of a person who's checking in or checking out. A few months after they opened the hotel, there was a lady, she was pregnant, and let's put it this way, the child decided to arrive a little bit earlier than anticipated. The lady went downstairs and she started talking to the robot, understanding that the robot was not programmed to deal with this specific issue. Luckily, there was a doctor in the hotel, the issue was solved, but this example gave you a sense that for certain routine work, it's absolutely okay to have, quote, machines doing work, but when it comes to empathy and all the rest, then the robot is probably not the right example. So this is to say that anything that cannot be digitalized, automated, will increasingly become even more valuable. Creativity, imagination, ethics, empathy, consciousness, values, anger, collaboration, emotion. So this is an area where I believe human resources has a huge, huge part to play. How you develop these skills, this behavior in the organization, knowing that the routine work and the digital transformation will eat up some certain task that is better than machine to perform. No? And there's another very interesting study done by Carnegie Institute of Technology to say, actually, 85% of your success as a professional has nothing to do with the core technical skills. It's your ability to communicate, negotiate, lead. And so there is plenty of evidence that explain that developing these skills is not about being a good guy, is actually promoting development and effective leadership in organization. Yeah. So as the world goes totally digital, it's our humanity on purpose that define who we are. Technology is an instrument, is a tool, rather than the final outcome. So how can you restart? Rebecca, I'm going to ask your help in a second, because I'm going to ask this question. This is I have to confess, I have the pleasure to collaborate with many organizations. I learn all the time, but one of them is Ferrari. So when I go to Maranello, I live in Geneva, but I go to Maranello a couple of times per year. My wife look at me like as if I'm going to the toy shop. It's just an amazing organization that produces these phenomenal cars. Now, this is my favorite one. It's a T8, and I'm going to ask you a very simple question, which is, what do you think allows this car to go up to 350 kilometers per hour? Which technical features allow these cars to go to up to 350 kilometers per hour? Rebecca, can you please read the answer?
I can. The first response is the brakes.
The brakes, great.
Oh, or the driver, the engine, horsepower, aerodynamics.
Okay.
Design.
Yeah, Rebecca, thank you. And you're all right, because the design, the aerodynamics, the tires, the pilot, the technology. But the first person is I wouldn't say the only person that is right, but he made a point, are the brakes. Fundamentally, what allows any car to go to a certain speed are the brakes. And I think we tend to forget that. And there is a very interesting study that was done by Harvard Business School recently. They went to 28,000 people. There was like 18 months, 15 months into the pandemic. And they asked, hey, listen, tell me how your general well-being has gone. And 85% of the people said actually has deteriorated. And only a small percentage, 20% of people said it's improved. These people were the ones that were commuting the longest ride to go to the office. So I think this is another very important center of work going forward, which is how can we help organizations to use the brakes, because you can accelerate only after using your brakes. Which brings us to the last item before we open for questions in probably 12 to 15 minutes. Which leadership is then needed? No, this is one model of leadership. There is one person speaking and everybody else is clapping. And in my book, there is a chapter called, North Korea is not that far away, because I saw that model of leadership even in Europe many times. It's not only the regime in North Korea. This is another leadership model, but we're not going to cover this model as well. I'm going to ask you a question, and Rebecca, I'm going to ask you once more to help me out, grazie, which is, which word comes to your mind when you think about the best leader that you have ever met? And I'd like you to reflect on a person that you've been working with. It could be a professor at university, a teacher, a family member, manager in your current colleague or in a former organization, but not these iconic individuals like Gandhi or JFK or Martin Luther King, no? So really people that you work alongside with. When you think about that individual, which word comes to your mind? And Rebecca, I'd like you to read at least 30 words from the 300 plus participants that are currently attending. Go,
oh
Rebecca.
Gosh, Paolo, they're coming in thick and fast, but empathy and inspiration, caring, trust, humanity, compassion, humor, respect, courage. So many words. There's clearly a lot of people who have been really emotionally touched by what you said today. Trust and empowering, vision, supportive, innovation, listening skills, authenticity.
Wow.
I like that word.
Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. And
you're welcome.
I need to confess something, because a social experiment is something that you don't know the outcome of it, okay? But I knew the outcome. I knew already the outcome, because even you already listened to me once in the past, and you know that I always ask this question. I ask these questions, I don't know, 300 times in my life, probably more. I asked this question to 500 CEOs in Davos when I was working for the World Economic Forum. I asked this question to students in China, in Zimbabwe, in Japan, in Brazil, to big audiences, HR people or leader in whatever organization. And it doesn't really matter who is listening. Everybody always respond the way you did. It's about trust, it's about integrity, it's about compassion, it's about communication, it's about innovation. Nobody ever has answered by saying, oh, somebody has increased sales by 20% or decreased costs by 30%, or somebody that has a PhD at Harvard or has written 3 books or speak 5 languages. What does it mean? What does it mean? That it doesn't matter where we are, it doesn't matter who we are, it doesn't even matter which profession or métier, as they say here in Geneva, you're doing. We always relate to leadership as a human quality. As a human quality. So we can go next, meaning, of course, after having a solidity of behavior and values, you need to deliver. You need to learn something. You need to deliver something. So I don't want to say, oh, you just need to be a good person. No, you need to also to produce some results somewhere, no? But the starting point is not the results. The starting point is who you are. So when we think about which kind of leader do we need to do, one of the mistakes that I've done in my capacity when I was, for example, Chief Learning Officer at the World Bank, of course I needed to develop people's skills, but did we spend enough time and focus to develop people behavior, human behavior, the same one that you just mentioned in the last few weeks? So good leadership is about, being good people. And as I said here, my wife is French and I live in Geneva. Savoir-faire means being able to do something comes after savoir-être, being able to be. So be comes first, do later. Okay? So which kind of leadership is then is needed? And I created a model that hopefully can be meaningful to you with some stories. And that's, I have to confess, is the center of my next book. The first one is, do you care? Do you care? And there is this wonderful phrase from Abraham Lincoln. They say, listen, people will, they don't care what you know until they know that you care. And caring is not about being politically correct. It's something more profound. And I've learned a bit about caring some years ago. I share this story many times because I've learned a lot from this individual. This guy is the Ronaldo or the Federer of Alaska. He's a guy who won the sled race in Alaska, the Yukon race for 6 consecutive years, okay? So when I was there in 2014 on a holiday with my wife and daughter, it was probably one of the best holidays we ever took in our life. We were in this little village in Alaska, and I met Mike, and because he was presenting his book. So I went to listen to him, and then he presented his book with some of the dogs around him. And so at the end of the presentation, we had a beer together, and I asked her, hey, Mike, help me to understand how on earth you've been able to win such a brutal competition that is more than 1,200 kilometers in January, when the average temperature can be as low as 45 to 50 degrees, but it's never less than 30. So it's 30 below zero, so it's brutal. And he said, we start with 16 dogs, and until recently the policy was you need to return at least with 8 dogs alive. And when a dog get injured, I never let them behind. I take them with me, and when we stop for eating, and they need to eat every 3 hours, given the brutal temperatures, I eat after them. I eat after them. So I've learned quite a lot about leadership from this guy, because he said, you never leave anybody behind, and you eat after your people, not before. So let me ask you one question. How do you spell care? When I ask this question, people say, Paolo, come on, that's pretty easy, C-A-R-E. Now, reality care is spelled with time. You care if you spend time. And one of the things that I do as a coach, when people say, yeah, I care about my people, I say, great, now please open the agenda and tell me how much time are you going to spend in the next months, how much time you have allocated in your next 30 days for caring. What does it mean caring? Well, spending time with somebody maybe is going through a nasty divorce, or somebody that has a difficult time. Is the engagement that builds the trust between people. So caring is not just a standalone concept. It's something that we could be doing if only we spend quality time with them. And you know it because if you have a child, as I'm lucky to have one, or maybe you have more than one or two, they don't want gifts from you. They want time from you. They want attention. Yeah. Second one is cause. Cause is fundamentally a sense of purpose. And I want to share another little story about my professional life. I told you I was head of human resources in some organization, and one of them was the World Bank. And one department was, I have to say, a little bit under fire because they were perceived to be not particularly effective. It was the recruitment function, okay? And one day I was called by the president and said, listen, Paolo, we're not happy with the function because it takes 1 year to get a person, and that's inconceivable. I think you have to do better than that. I was, of course, quite frankly demoralized because it's not fun when the boss of your boss calls you to tell you that he's not happy with the delivery of one of the part of your responsibilities. But I saw his point. And then a few weeks later, there was this horrific earthquake in Haiti. So there was a meeting in the middle of the night with the president, the senior leaders, and the president looked at me and said, Paolo, we need to put 40 people immediately in Haiti, and we have to recruit 200 of them by maximum 2 months. And by the way, don't forget they need to speak French. So when I left the meeting, some people look at me and they say, okay, Paolo, they look at me like, okay, Paolo is done because no way they're going to deliver 250 people on the ground within a few weeks. 2 hours later, I called the meeting with everybody in my team. And there was a huge team, not only recruitment, but 300 people. I said, guys, listen, we need to do that. This is a moment where we can prove that we add value. This is a moment where we prove that we care. And guess what? They did it. They did it. And this is the moment where I realized that when I was putting an emphasis on process improvement, people got demoralized. But when I reconnected with the mission, with the purpose, the missionaries came back and the mercenaries disappeared. So to me, another big element of being in human resources is to keep the purpose alive, what Bruce Springsteen called the fires in your belly, the reason why you're there. Connection and collaboration. Well, we know it that from the cognitive standpoint, we used to solve problems that were complicated, and a complicated problems requires fundamentally expertise on this domain. So if tomorrow your TV set is broken, you get a guy that is fixing. So you need an expert on that field. But if you think about Ukraine, COVID, climate change, demographic, the job markets, these are not just complicated problems, these are complex. And complexity require learning, adaptation, connecting the dots, and most importantly, collaboration. And this is just a visualization of the complexity that we're dealing with. This I call a transformation map from the World Economic Forum, which is just a brilliant way simply to say, listen, whatever problem you're dealing with, there are so many elements into the equation that from the cognitive standpoint, we need to connect, and from the human standpoint, we need to collaborate. So creativity is the next one. So leadership to me is care, cause, connection, and creativity. And how do we create creativity? Well, the first one is by having diverse team. This is a soccer team, just scored a goal. The 3 players are from 3 different religions, and they're celebrating the goal. And this is, to me, is fundamentally, which how you preserve the individual identity and the prerogative of people to be who they are from the political, sexual, religious standpoint, and simultaneously to make sure they're playing for the same game, from the same team, and they're playing the same game. Here, I want to share something quite interesting because Google has done, I collaborate with Google quite extensively. As you can imagine, it's quite an interesting organization. I don't claim that I understand fully what they're doing because it's a huge organization. But some time ago, they really wanted to say what makes an effective team, and they collected billions of data. They collected 72 different variables, And they have fundamentally figured out what makes an effective team. Psychological safety, dependability, structure and clarity, meaning, and impact. And when it comes to psychological safety, you know that Amy Edmondson has been voted as the most influential thinker in human resources for a reason. Say safety is a shared belief and by a member of the team, the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. So psychological safety is a crucial element to create teams that works in organization. Last is courage. Last is courage. And I want to share this story because her name is Ngozi, and she used to be my boss at the World Bank many years ago. In my view, the best leader I've ever worked in all my life. I had the good fortune to work with amazing people. This is to me is Federer. This is to me is Bruce Springsteen. This is surely above everybody else I've ever worked in my life. Yeah. So some time ago, we were working together, and she was the boss, the managing director of the World Bank, fundamentally the number 2 of the World Bank. Among her responsibility, human resources. And on this capacity, I reported to her. And then she left. She became a Minister of Finance in Nigeria. And I was heartbroken when she left because I absolutely loved working with her. She's currently the head of WTO here in Geneva. And I told her, listen, if you ever come back to Washington, D.C., in your capacity as a Minister of Finance, please let me know because I'd like to organize a presentation of your book. She wrote a book called Reforming the Unreformable. So she came, she presented the book, and we cut a long story short here, but fundamentally she said, no, when you try to reform the unreformable, when you try to fight corruption, which is not limited only to Nigeria, just to be clear, in my country, regrettably, is also very, very present, a few bad things could happen. And they attacked me, they attacked my team, my credibility. I don't care, I continue, but I fear that eventually it's going to attack somebody that I love or in my family. She was right, because a few weeks later, they kidnapped her mother. They kidnapped the mother and they asked her the criminals asked her for the condition of her release, that she would have left Nigeria, not resign from the cabinet, leave Nigeria forever. She went on TV and she said, I'm going to get you. And that was it. I'm going to get you. Now, luckily her mother was able to escape from these criminals. So she's sound and safe as we speak today. But a couple of years ago, I took her for lunch. We had a meeting, and I said, Ngozi, I've been meaning to ask you this question for many years. And to say, what's happened from the moment where you learned about the kidnapping of your mother and the moment where you went on TV and you said, I'm not going to negotiate, but I'm going to get you. And he said, no, Paolo, that was a terrible moment of my professional and personal life. And all I wanted to do is to talk to my dad. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't even take a call from the president of Nigeria. I just wanted to be alone, thinking, and talk to my father. So when I was talking to him, I said, Dad, what am I supposed to do? I'm lost. And I said, well, my dad told me, Ngozi, just remember what you stand for. Remember what you stand for. So to me, leadership is a lot to do with remembering what you stand for. So let me close with maybe 5 takeaways that to me are meaningful. And then I'll go back to the question about how good are you in singing. So the way I see, I have the good fortune to work with many organizations and amazing people in so many different countries, no? And from Microsoft to Ferrari to Unicredit, Pictet, United Nations, you Brixton, or you name it, okay? So I keep on learning on a daily basis from my clients, from the CEOs, from the HR directors or the head of learning and development, that usually my counterpart, no? And if you think about, in my view, the agenda of HR is defined on these criteria. So the first one is we are shaping a transformation. We're not just managing change. And when I say just, I'm not saying that it's easy, but transformation is more complicated. It implies gravitas and Juventus. We need to support people well-being and our well-being as well. Self-care. We need to drive digital transformation. We need to invest in people professional development. And when I say professional development, I'm not referring only to the technical side, but the human side. And I think we need to transform leadership model in a meaningful way. Now, I want to go back to you on the question, how good are you in singing? Because one of the companies that I collaborate with is Manpower. And I don't want to say that this is a better company than others, just a great company. There are many of them that I have the fortune to work with. And there is a group that you call Future Leaders, about 180 people in Europe. And, you know, I've been working a little bit with this group and with Manpower to do leadership development for this group. So we asked these people to say, how good are you in singing? And the answer was on average 3.72. Few people were very good, but most of the people, like myself, not good at all. And so the challenge would we thought to say, okay, how can we make sure that these people, they have a perception to be well below average, we can bring to another level. We gave them 1 hour of coaching. And so we became a bit of a director of an orchestra. And because we've done that during COVID, the orchestra was not in a theater hall where people were working from home. So we gave them 1 hour of coaching, and we wanted to see if we were able to convince people that rate themselves as 3.7 to go to a different level. Let's see what's happened.
I'm not a stranger to love. They say, 'cause we don't want your broken hearts. Learn to be ashamed of all the scars. Run away, they say, no one will love you as you are. Don't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us. For we are glorious.
So thank you for listening. And perhaps just to conclude, I think that our role is actually to help people to be better than they think they are. So thank you. Happy to take whatever comment. And if you think about a present for me, my birthday is next month, the Ferrari T8 will be extremely appreciated. Grazie, grazie. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Evan.
Oh, Paolo, that was amazing. And the singing at the end, there was such a reaction in the chat. People were absolutely loving it. We did slightly run over time, so I'm not sure we're going to get to all of the questions, but there are some people who'd like to ask you some things about what you said this morning. So, so in particular, someone asked, do empathy and care affect emotional intelligence? So in a corporate world, we need to take difficult decisions. One part of the mind says to take the decision without getting overly emotionally involved. How do we overcome this? What are your thoughts?
No, listen, I think the modality in which you deal with difficult situation is crucial, okay? I mean, I have to say, I mean, I've been head of HR for many years, and many times I had the terrible task to tell somebody, listen, you got to go, no? The way you do it is absolutely crucial. And I'm gonna share a secret with you, and maybe you're gonna hate me after I'm doing this, I'm sharing this with you guys. But one thing that I've done many times with my team, with member in my team, I used to, let's say that Rebecca, you work with me, okay? And I'm your boss, just for the sake of example for 2 seconds, okay?
Go ahead.
When I say I'm your boss, I don't mean at all that I feel that way, okay? But let's say that I'm calling you today, and we've done a very good job or whatever, and we like working with each other, and say, listen, I'm sorry, this is your last day, you've got to go. And you look at me flabbergasted, stunned, and to say, Paolo, how comes? It's just awful. You know, you've done that. You know, you got promoted, and you get confused, and I say, I'm sorry. You're fired, and I'll see you tomorrow morning for details. And just please don't do anything stupid in the next few hours, but I'll see you tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning. I've done this many times, fundamentally with almost everybody in my team. So the day after people came, usually very upset with me, almost to the point of being violent. And I say, okay, before we start talking, I'd like you to hear 2 things. The first one, I was joking. The second one, how did it make you feel being fired? Because you're going to do this to other people in the future, okay? So think the way you felt. Tomorrow, you have somebody else, and this time it's not going to be a joke. So people, wow. So empathy is not a bullet point in a job description. Is understanding the suffering that people have to go through. And so I can give a great article on Harvard Business Review about empathy. If you say, yeah, we heard that before, we learned from Daniel Goleman, blah, blah, blah. No, you have to feel the pain. You have to feel, you know, the difficulty of some people struggling. Now, Evan was referring to the war in Ukraine, which is in the 6 million refugees right now, but let's not forget the 9 million refugees from Syria as well, no? So empathy is a quintessential modality to be effective in human resources. And one of the most crucial moments is when you have bloody difficult conversations, and the ultimate one when we cut the umbilical cord and say, you got to go, you need to understand the suffering. So what I've done was cruel, yes, but it really worked because people, when they approach firing, they approach it with a completely different modality and mindset than just you know, do some paperwork and get a person out of the door.
That's really powerful. I'm quite glad you didn't put me in that scenario, Paolo. But actually, that leads really nicely onto another question, and it's, what will be the future of HR if AI takes over? Because we're going to lose that empathy, we're going to lose that human connection. How would you reflect on that?
No, I don't think we do, actually. I was trying, maybe I wasn't able to convey the opposite, which is, you know, to go back to one example for the IBM, of course, the facial recognition slot people into say, this is great for us, this person is, it would be better for marketing or for procurement or for human resources. But then the second round is actually a conversation of values. Like it's a conversation about, are your values compatible with the one of the organizations? And that's fundamentally the topic of my book now. So I think, if I may say so, we need to develop a clear understanding of technological transformation, the digital, the artificial intelligence, and simultaneously to continue to use what makes us human.
I hope that answers then clarifies the point then for whoever made that really interesting question. And just leading on from that really, how can we put more emphasis on the soft skills when we're recruiting senior leaders? I mean, HR, we are doing the recruiting, yet we're really focusing on the hard skills and the education. How do we do that?
Well, I've done this mistake many times because, even at the World Bank, everybody has a PhD, an impressive list of publications. So chapeau, I mean, from the technical standpoint, these people are wonderful. But as we've learned from the question I asked you, leadership is not defined by the fact that I wrote a book or I speak another language. It's defined that, do I trust that individual? Would I go to work with him? Does this person has integrity or not? No. So I think it is important for us to look at this element. And one element is maybe it's very simple, but in an interview, if a person say I, me, usually you're recruiting a narcissist. Okay, but if a person is actually acknowledging the struggle, the vulnerability, the authenticity, and also the fact that whatever you're doing, as Bruce Springsteen would say, you need a band. You need a band. You cannot play alone. Okay, and so even in the language, you understand if a person is already, let's say, channeled into working as a team player in which he wants to grow people, or not. I mean, the example of the song of Manpower is we went to the board and we showed the board of Manpower this video and to say, that's your job, guys. People that think that, well, I'm okay, I'm not so great, they go from 3 to 8. Then we asked them, how would you rate this song? And the average was 8.2, 8.4. And people say, can you see? You improve 50% with 1 hour coaching. And they say, leaders, that's your job. Your job is not to be better than your people, but to help your people to be better. That's a completely different sport. And when you understand that, you become a leader. If you're not, you're just a technical contributor.
I guess that is an interesting concept because that's what I would look for in a leader if I was moving forwards, but I'm not sure it's what we would necessarily always automatically go for when we're recruiting. But then is there a dilemma between sort of really demonstrating that empathy, but sort of keeping that professional distance at work, particularly if you're in an HR role? Do you think that's a problem or is it something we can overcome?
No, this is a very good question, which is, does it mean that we have to become friends? Not at all. Not at all. It's not about spending vacation with your team, but being approachable, humble, and again, demonstrating the empathy that you need to have. One of the things that I always ask people, they say, do you know the name of your CEO? And people say, yeah, his name is Roger or Jennifer, whatever it is, okay? And do you know the name of the person who's doing the cleaning of the office? And nobody knows it, okay? So empathy to me is start by acknowledging people presence, and people are people. You can be the CEO, you could be the cleaning person that is coming at 8 in the evening to clean your office. You need to engage with these guys, no? And there are a couple of stories in my book which is a bit funny about that. But to me, it starts by acknowledging that you're not a financial analyst in Latin America department. You're Rebecca. You're Paolo, you're Jennifer, and I know something about you, and I can relate to you also because, as we've learned, people are motivated by different elements. I mean, a single mother with 4 kids has probably more need of flexibility than a single guy, age 29, that is focused on his career. How do you understand them is important. It's not about becoming friends. It's about understanding what makes them tick, the motivational part, and provide them the space to perform in a psychological safe environment. This is what we've learned from the study at Google.
And you just talked about the context being different for different people. Someone's made a comment here, leadership itself does not change, but the context does. So why does HR always launch new concepts only to find that we should go back to the essence of the profession?
Well, that's a good question, because I think, we keep on talking about stuff that we need to do, but perhaps maybe in the next presentation, I will give a presentation about stuff that we should not be doing at all. Give an example, because I really focus on that one. Performance management, rating people, it just, it's like a disaster every single time, because we fundamentally have to say to 80% of the people, you're average. This is terrible. This is terrible. And go to your child and you say, my name, the child, my daughter's name is Sadiqa, and say, Sadiqa, you know what? I believe you're average. Look at her face, okay? And it doesn't work. This is not to say that everybody is a genius, but to say, hey, listen, perhaps coaching can help on this one. To say, listen, you're very good in A, B, and C. How can I help you in improving something perhaps you're struggling? Or how can I make sure that you can become even better in what you're doing? No? And here's the difference between passion, talent, and strengths. Passion is something that you're passionate about. Let's say you're passionate about, I don't know, playing guitar. Okay. Talent is something that people recognize that you're very good, but strength is talent multiplied by sweat, meaning the effort that you've put in develop that talent. No, and I quote the story which I always found very interesting. I love tennis, and there was an Italian player that won the USA Open 10 years ago called Flavia Pennetta. That she was a seeds number 26, so she was clearly not the favorite on that tournament, but she won against another Italian. And then the last shot was an amazing shot, and she won. And an Italian journalist went to her with a microphone and said, Flavia, you are the champion. They said, wow, what a stroke of luck, this shot. And she said, and I'm going to say a bad word in a second, so please forgive me. She took the journalist this way, and she said, a tough shot, a fuck. I've been working 23 years for make it sure.
Yes.
That phrase to me was beautiful, because basically saying, no, there are no tough shots. There are 20 years of training in order for me to get that. So one of the things I'm trying to convey to say, once you discover your gift, which is your talent, make sure that you apply this talent with grit and determination, because then it's not a lucky shot. It's the way you perform under pressure. And the phrase that was very colorful by this Italian player, I showed it a few times, but is so true to say, listen, I discovered that I was talented in tennis. I played 23 years professionally, and I'm today winning the USA Open because of that reason. Please don't tell me it's luck.
Great comment. Going off on a slightly different tangent, I'm aware we've only got a couple more minutes of questions, but there are two that are really similar around industries that are struggling for individuals because there's a lack of talent or there's a lack of qualified workers. And how can we help them both at a sort of as a company level, but also at a country level?
Listen, as I mentioned, I work with many organizations. One of them, which is mentioned more than once, is Manpower. Manpower has done a very interesting study by asking about 40,000 people worldwide, what do you want? What is called what workers want, okay? Mm-hmm. And basically they say three things, okay? One, leadership, purpose, and flexibility, okay? That doesn't mean that you can pay them 200 euros per month, but it's interesting. They say, listen, I want to go in a place where leadership has integrity and values, and I trust them. Two, I want to be in a place where whatever I do has a purpose for me, other than just my job description. And three, please let me have flexibility in whatever I do. Don't force me to be 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, because I can maybe work incredibly well on Saturday, but on Wednesday I have to take my kids to tennis and, I don't know, gym or whatever it is, no? And so some organizations and sectors are struggling, and they think that the problem can be solved by putting an extra little bit of money. I'll give an example. When Ryanair last week has decided to give £1,000 bonus to people if they would have stayed. That was the day in which they had the highest number of resignation. Okay? Because fundamentally say, you know what, Rebecca, I know you're unhappy. I know you don't see your kids. I know you're tired like this, but no, I'll give you €1,000, shut up. And now people say, you know what, that's not the way you're going to keep me here. No, you know what, this is an insult, grazie, goodbye, and auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, goodbye. No? So what I'm trying to say is that people are not for sale. We are not for sale. We need purpose. We need good leadership. We need values. We need a safe space where we can operate. We need to know that we're growing. No, what Daniel Pink called it as a mastery. If you provide that, then people will come. If you don't, and you think you can solve that problem by putting 1,000, even 10,000 on the table, you're going to get maybe some mercenaries, but you're going to lose your soul. So don't go there.
You exactly summed up my working experience. I'm delighted to say that I have all of those three things in my role, which is why I so love doing the job that I'm doing here today. Fantastic. And on that note, unfortunately, we're out of time for questions. It's been my absolute pleasure to be chatting with you this morning, Paolo, and thank you for joining us on International HR Day.
Fantastic. I was honored to be invited. Grazie again. Thanks so much. Keep in touch.
Oh, very much so. And on that note, I would like to introduce my colleague and friend, Berna Ostenaz. Berna is a board member of both the World Federation of People Management Associations and the European Association for People Management. She is the chair of the events committee and the chief human resources officer of an international energy company. Berna, happy International HR Day. And the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Wow, Paolo, thank you. Thank you. I am so inspired, and thanks for this mind-blowing presentation. And thank you to EAPM Secretariat to putting their heart and soul into this celebration and providing this opportunity to us. And thank you to Evan for the lovely opening session. And thank you to you all for being here with all these curious minds. Before you go, I'm gonna ask a promise from you, but bear with me for 2 seconds, so I'll give you my reasons for asking. While I was listening to Paolo, one more time, it hit me that the world is evolving, so is HR. As HR professionals, we face this with these tremendous expectations in the 5 Cs era. As Paolo said, in chaos, crisis, complexity, confusion, and constant change, organizations expect HR professionals to perform, to transform, lead, and change too. We are the professionals who deeply care about the business, organization, and the employees we serve. On the other hand, we are the leaders, and many times, let's face it, the buffers and cushions for employees and the organizations. But we also want to perform, transform, and lead the change. Thinking about it, I stopped for a second and a question popped in my head by another music legend, not Bruce this time, but another legend, Michael Jackson, asked once, "What about us?" So I'd like to join him asking, what about us? What about us, HR people? Do we look after the people we expect to transform the most? In HR, we tend to focus on more the other people's needs and less on ourselves. So on our day, at the closing, I'd like you to invite you, HR people, to think about HR people too. So today, alongside all the smart things that you do for the business itself, let's promise to stay committed to look after to yourself and your teams. Have empathy and compassion toward yourself and your people. Think about well-being. Watch and protect HR from being emotionally worn out. And surround yourself and your team with the right networks of support and learning, like EAPM. Well, let's remember what Evan said at the beginning. This is a day to celebrate on what we are, how we contribute, and what we believe in. Make the most out of it. Check the presentation from our website by the end of the day. It's going to be available. So, happy International HR Day to all. Thank you for being here.